I from my experience, trust Swatch. Hey there, welcome to my channel, String Things by Mel. My name is Melissa. I also go by Mel. I'm a stay-at-home mom living in Vancouver, Canada, and on my channel I chat and share everything about my knitting hobby. So I feel like it's been a month. So this is episode 15 of my monthly update. I have I guess a quick explanation about how my videos are titled. The numbered episodes came about because that's just how I started my channel. And originally I started out with the typical format of a finished object, whip, and what people refer to as acquisitions or new yarn. And I keep the numbering system because these have a somewhat chronological component to them. There is a little bit of reliance on information from past numbered episodes. However, moving forward, I don't want to necessarily stick to that format. I definitely want to, focus on the finished object side of it. And if that particular garment or object evokes some sort of extra thoughts, I want to bring in more discussion about that. Rather than trying to fit a whole bunch of items into a video, I'd rather have more meaningful discussion about fewer things. So that's that part. And it's going to be, a semi-casual, may drop in some life updates if it feels relevant or if it's something that's really nagging me. But that's how, and I'm going to release these monthly. Now, the other videos I release, such as my last video, which was titled That Sweater Cost What, those are what I refer to as discussion topics. Those are something that I want to get more into. I, of course, will continue these like numbered monthly episodes, but you can definitely expect more discussion topic videos from me. And since I just mentioned that video, I do want to mention or say a big thank you to everyone who has watched that video, has left me such lovely comments, and because of that video, I've got a big jump in number of subscribers, and it's amazing for me to say that I've hit 1K, and again, it's just amazing. It's milestone for me, a big milestone for me. It's just, I guess, evidence of people actually enjoying listening and watching my content. And it's just lovely to become part of this wonderful knitting community. So thank you to everyone who has been supporting me. Thank you to whoever has recently subscribed. I look forward to bringing you more lovely content. And also from comments of that video, I've learned, more about myself as well. So I wanted to touch on the word choice of saying that I was allowed to buy yarn. And I really appreciate, I believe her name was Lisa, who commented about, and also other people who chimed in, but how using the word allowed can become unhealthy. And it's certainly not representative of my relationship and the situation that I'm in with my husband. He certainly has been supportive from day one of me wanting to start a YouTube channel. So thank you for calling me out on that. I didn't take that negatively at all. Again, greatly appreciated that. And I just appreciate all the lovely comments that have been coming in and how supportive you guys are of being a stay-at-home mom, and also in support of that comment that was made. I certainly get those down times where mom guilt comes into play. And when I get into those particular situations or moods, it can be easy to lose sight of how much I do provide for this family. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. I'll get into why that is the case. But I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone. I do read every comment, and I'm enjoying reading all the comments and all the feedback. So I'm going to leave it there because I want to get into this episode, which is going to be about what I am wearing today and why I sound the way I sound. So the month of May, I said, has been quite a month. It's unfortunately, I have spent the majority of this month sick. Mostly from, well, actually, I got the flu. And my husband had a project deadline move up by about a week. So he has, from the beginning of May, worked every day about at least 12-hour days, including the weekends. Tiberius is joining us now. Hey, buddy. And so that means I, as like mom duties, have been working kind of overtime myself. And then on top of that, getting the flu, Darcy being sick. My sister was away on vacation, so I didn't have my usual, minimum 1 day morning, afternoon break where she would babysit Darcy. And just feeling tired and feeling like I wasn't going to catch a break. Because on top of flu and then now with a cold, I also have seasonal allergies. So I apologize. My voice is not going to sound super great. But I finally feel just well enough to sit down and record a video because I have just been itching to share all the details about my latest finished object, which is this cardigan, which I feel like it's not going to last very long on me. I'm starting to get warm already, but okay, let's stop rambling. So I really wanted to focus on this cardigan for this episode because this is something that has generated a lot of questions. This is a yarn that I think a lot of people are interested in. So let's go back to the beginning of why I even made this cardigan. Earlier this year, I released a video about how I'm using knitting to fill wardrobe gaps. So this year, it's part of my goal to really put in some extra thought and assessment into choosing what to knit next. Yes, knitting is a hobby and it is something that I want to be fun, but I also, because I can create garments for myself, I do want to have a percentage of my knit items be items that I want to wear and enjoy and fit into my wardrobe. So as part of that assessment, I determined that I am really lacking in the cardigan department. So that is how I decided that I wanted to make a cardigan. Now, but the choice of this yarn is something I saw about a year ago on Tiffany Lou's channel, Typical Bliss. She shared this yarn. She held up the skein, Noro Madara yarn in the colorway Sake, and I instantly fell in love with it. But at that time, I wasn't prepared to use it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, because this is before I made this goal about being more mindful about what I was going to add into my wardrobe. So I kind of shelved the idea, but I always had kept it in mind. And when I thought about this yarn again, it wasn't available. So fast forward to January, February of this year, this yarn came in stock at a local yarn shop called Urban Yarns here in Vancouver. And I took that as a sign that I needed to get my hands on this yarn finally. And at about the same time, I saw Emily of High Fiber Knits also purchase this yarn. Now, Tiffany made, I believe it's cardigan number 8. I could be wrong, but her cardigan, she held a strand of Noro, or this yarn, with mohair. And her cardigan is like an oversized fit, drop shoulder with a v-neck. Emily's cardigan, she followed the pattern called the Traveler's Cardigan from Ozetta, and hers is a crew neck. However, she has less positive ease and a slightly cropped fit, which I liked. So having seen those two cardigans, and also after my video where I conducted performance reviews on items I knit for myself last year, I'm really glad I waited until this year to get my hands on this yarn and make a cardigan, because I had a much better sense of the type of cardigan I wanted to make. So the Champagne Cardigan had been in my favorites list in Ravelry for quite some time. But since my assessment of what I actually like to wear, I discovered that I wear items, with relaxed ease, but not, greatly oversized. And the Champagne Cardigan would put me at about 10, 11 inches of positive ease, which was beyond what I wanted to make, and beyond what I knew I would actually wear often. And after doing a gauge swatch, I wasn't at the gauge of the Champagne Cardigan anyways, and since I didn't like that ease, I decided that I wasn't going to follow that pattern, because there was, a bunch of modifications I would have had to make to reduce the amount of positive ease for my desired fit. So, but I still really liked the look of the Champagne Cardigan, in particular the double knit button band and the somewhat pronounced raglan line. And I mentioned raglan, I definitely wanted a raglan construction, because I find that more flattering fit. And also, since I was gonna semi-draft up this pattern, raglan construction is something I'm very comfortable with manipulating and modifying for my body. So what I ended up doing was busting out my handy dandy book, one of Anne Budd's book, called The Knitter's Handy Book of Top-Down Sweaters. Now, this is a great book if you are somewhat adventurous and just kind of need like a standard to go off of. But what I did was, there is a schematic in this book. And so what you do when you use this is that you actually just choose a gauge, and you do have to review the measurements from the schematic and measure your body, because it doesn't give you any recommendations about ease. You have to choose that yourself. So since I wanted, my goal was 8 inches of positive ease, I chose the size. So at the top of the page, it lists the finished bust or the chest circumference. And so I chose the size that would give me 8 inches of positive ease. So let's call that size B. However, looking at the measurements for the armhole and the sleeve circumference, I didn't want that big of an armhole. So I modified it, and I looked at the size, one size down. Let's call that size A. But since when you do the raglan construction, there's a particular number of stitches you have to cast on for the underarm when you split the for sleeves. So I kept the original cast on number of the underarm stitches of size B. That would maintain that 8-inch positive ease around the bust. However, my sleeve stitch count, I worked to size A, so the one size down. But since I kept the original cast on stitch count, my armhole is in between those two sizes. I hope that makes sense. But I think that worked out really well for me because I have enough ease that I can move around in my cardigan, but it's also not so much ease that it doesn't fit under a jacket. That is my big thing in terms of layering. My cardigans, my sweaters need to fit under a jacket. And that is because I ideally prefer my sweaters and my cardigans to be items that I can wear. I aim for 6 months of the year, so being able to layer under a jacket in the wintertime. So that's why I always keep armhole, like how bulky this area is in mind. So once I reached the point of splitting or separating the body from the sleeves, I no longer needed to reference this book because I could just carry on myself. But it was really important to use this book to figure out how many stitches to cast on. I probably could have figured it out myself, but I just didn't want to do the extra brain work. So when I looked at the number of stitches to cast on from the book, I did modify the distribution of those stitches because I wanted a more pronounced raglan line. So I have 2 stitches in between my make one rights and my make one lefts so that I have a somewhat more pronounced raglan line. It's not quite as pronounced or wide as the one on the Champagne cardigan from what I can see in pictures. So again, I don't have the actual pattern. It looks like maybe 3 stitches in between the increases. That's just my best guess. I don't have the pattern, but that's just what it kind of looks like. Another difference between my cardigan and the Champagne cardigan is that I don't have any short rows. And again, this is just from what I've read on Ravelry and from other comments. I believe the Champagne cardigan has short rows, but I just wanted to say that mine doesn't. And I think it fits fine, given that it's quite an open neck. If it was a crew neck, maybe I'd have to worry about, if it's fully buttoned up, coming up against the front of my neck. But since it's quite open, I have no short rows and it feels fine. So speaking of the neck, if you have watched episode 13, then this might seem a little redundant, but since I'm going through the full story of it, I'm going to talk about the neckline again. And so what happened was that I started with an increase rate to create the V-neck. My goal was to make a deep V-neck like what you see on the Champagne cardigan. But the increase rate that I started with, I believe, was every right side row, and it was creating too shallow of a V-neck. Like if I had kept going with that rate, my V-neck would have just been like up here. And considering that, a button band is added, that's not what I was going for. So rather than frog back, I just changed my increase rate to, I don't think it was every other right side row. It was like every 3rd right side row. And so, of course, since I didn't frog back, I had this very strange shape where my fabric came out and then like the angle changed. And I was fine with that because I knew I could correct that when it came time to pick up stitches for the button band. And that's exactly what I did. So I left markers in my work, which they're still in there. I forgot. I've been wearing this cardigan and there's still stitch markers in it. But it's actually good because I can show you guys. I have 2 markers here. And that's the point at which I'd stopped my increases and just worked straight down for the body. So I knew, there is another stitch marker here. So I could easily kind of map out the shape of my V-neck and also make sure both sides were symmetrical. So I figured out where like my desired increase rate was a particular section here. And you can see when you look on the inside of my cardigan, there's not a lot of like excess fabric. So I really did pick up near the edge of the fabric for there. And then I needed to do some correcting where I had that kind of like weird shape where I had that increased rate that I didn't like. And I kind of mimicked the same slope down here up into here. So let me just take this off so I can show you guys, or I might have to put in some supplementary footage for this. So it's not too much extra fabric, but this is all the excess fabric here that I had to kind of remove as I picked up my button band. And so as I was picking up and kind of creating this new slope, I was very careful in counting out my stitches so that I could have the exact same number of stitches and slope on the other side. And this bit of fabric, this excess, does not flop around or anything. It stays folded in really nice. So the last thing I kind of want to mention about construction of this cardigan is the sleeves. So sorry, I just heard a loud bang. Not sure what that was. I wanted a somewhat, or had thought I wanted a somewhat kind of fitted sleeve. I didn't want anything too baggy. And so I had done some calculations about how long I wanted my sleeve to be and my wrist circumference, did the math figuring out how many decreases I would need to do, knit up the sleeve. My math worked out great, but turns out I really didn't like the fit of the sleeve. It was too tapered, too fitted, too close to my arm. And I also felt like since it was so close, it wasn't like tight or really restricting around my elbow area, but I just felt like after time, after a lot of movement, the elbow area would bag out, and I just didn't want that extra stress on the fabric in that area. So if you see my reels, then you know that I frogged my sleeves, and that's fine because I'm really not afraid to frog. It was actually pretty easy, like relatively smooth process. So I ended up frogging back to my second decrease round, which was about nearly 2 inches from the underarm cast on area is how far back I frogged. And then just knit straight from, so here's the underarm cast on here, and then I knit straight from about this part here where my finger is. And I like the sleeve so much better. In terms of the length of the sleeve, I don't like really long sleeves. Really long sleeves is actually okay as long as the sleeve circumference is not too wide. There's gotta be a good balance, because if it's too wide, then I find it hard to roll up my sleeves, and I'm not really a sleeve cuff roll person. So my sleeves come to like just where my palm starts, and that's perfect for me. But when I was knitting up the length, I came to a point where I wasn't sure how much I knew my fabric would grow, but I wasn't sure how much. So, but I also didn't want to have too long of a sleeve and have to frog back again. So I took a chance. Um, Given how much I knew the fabric would grow based on my swatch, I decided to just semi-aggressively block my sleeve to my desired sleeve length, which I believe was, I think it's about 42 centimeters from the underarm cast on. I don't know how much that is in inches, I'm sorry. um, but yeah, and then I think it worked out great. My stitches don't look like stretched this way from having to do that. And it wasn't super aggressive. It was like semi-aggressive. But I think it worked out great, and the sleeves are perfect. So again, I'm really happy with how this cardigan turned out. I highly encourage you guys to really like review what you've been wearing and think about how you want to wear it. So the reason why, well, part of the reason why I wanted only 8 inches of positive ease, because that's for me the perfect balance of being cozy and comfortable, but also looking somewhat polished, put together. Because I want this cardigan to be super versatile, I wanted this to be something that I can not only wear at home, be comfortable, but also use as like a dress up and, you know, dress down for my outfits. That way, my style is relatively casual, and even when I do go out, in not too many fancy places I'm going to. And this yarn, okay, so that's a lot of talk about the construction and the making of this cardigan, but this yarn. So this is my first time using this particular line from Noro, so I can't confidently comment about the longevity of it, the wear of it, but the feel of knitting with it was great. It was kind of somewhat exciting seeing how the colors are going to play out. And the color distribution is pretty good. I feel like because it's kind of like a speckle tweedy characteristic to it, there isn't too much worry, or I wasn't concerned too much about color pooling, unlike kind of what happened with the Noro Silk Garden Solo colorway Omitama yarn that I used for my Wednesday sweater. So I actually have a skein of that here just as a comparison. I don't know if you can really tell in skein form, however, maybe I'll pop up a comparison of this sake cardigan next to my Wednesday sweater so you can see the difference of like what I think had, you know, color pooling versus not color pooling. But, you know, just for kicks, here's those two yarns together. So speaking of comparing these two yarns, I can say that there's definitely a blocking difference between these two yarns. So when I was making my Wednesday sweater out of this yarn, when I was nearly done knitting up that sweater, I actually had major concerns about whether the sweater was going to have the amount of ease it was supposed to have, because it was like close fitting and kind of short. Not that it was like cropped short, but it was coming out smaller than expected. But I did do a gauge swatch, so there was a lot of faith put into my gauge swatch, and I said, just trust the process. And then, my goodness, this yarn, the Silk Garden Solo yarn, wow, it grew. Like that sweater, I think I ended up with maybe about an inch to an inch and a half extra positive ease compared to what the finished measurements are supposed to be for the size extra small. So these two yarns do have different fiber distributions. So the fiber contents are relatively similar, but So the Omitama, the Silk Garden Solo, has 45% silk, 45% mohair, 10% wool. The Madara yarn is much more woollier, more animal fiber, if we're not considering silk as a true animal fiber. It is 60% wool, 30% silk, 10% alpaca. So this did kind of like grow as you kind of typically see after you wash and block something, but not to the same degree as this yarn. So wanted to mention that to you guys as well. But it does, like, there is growth. So kind of like make sure you wash and block your swatch for these two yarns. And I from my experience, trust the swatch. All right, next I want to get into the amount of yarn I used. Because I was kind of semi-drafting up this pattern, I took a chance about how much yarn to buy. So I originally purchased 6 skeins of this yarn, and I kind of roughly based it on the amount of yarn used in the Champagne Cardigan. For petite knit patterns, I think I've always knit the size extra small. I'm a slender person. So I kind of used that as a guide. And then I kind of knew that I should end up with excess since I was going to be knitting up a slightly cropped and less positive ease cardigan. So I have one full unused skein plus this is 67 grams of yarn from the 5th skein, and these are sold in 100 gram amounts. So I used just under 4.5 skeins of yarn for my size. So I have more like detailed measurements and information in my Ravelry for this cardigan. But you know what? I'll put it in the description box near the bottom if you want to know like the actual measurements. I have my finished measurements, and I'll put a header there saying like detailed measurements in case that's something you don't want to see, but at least like the header will come up if you start scrolling. If by the time this video is released and you don't see that information, please just remind me. That's what happened on my last video, the sweater cost video. Someone actually said in the comments like, oh, may I make a suggestion of including links? So I am definitely someone who likes to put in links. I just completely forgot to in that video. You know, I had a mental note of going back and updating that, but I just forgot. So just give me a little nudge and I'll put it in because I'm happy to share that information. I like sharing that information because I know there are some people who find that of value for their own makes. So thanks. The next bit of information is cost. So carrying on with my yarn cost video, I am going to start including project cost in all my episodes, just because, again, I think people find this valuable. I'm not hiding how much I spend. I mean, if you're really like investigative, you could find this information yourself, but I'm just gonna say it directly in my videos moving forward. So I bought this yarn locally. The cost of this yarn is $29.95. And I bought 6, but I'm gonna give you the actual project amount. So since I have one extra, we'll call it as 5 used. And I'm gonna have to do the math right here live in front of you guys because I didn't bring my notebook out with me. So we have $29.95 times 5, and then add, it's 5% GST added to here. So we have a project material cost of $157.24. Now, some of you keeners out there or close observers might say, well, what about buttons? So I have yet to pick buttons for this cardigan, and I would like you guys to help me choose buttons. So I'm gonna put up on the screen a few different options. I'll put them out, but I just can't decide on the buttons. And buttons are so tough because sometimes they really can make or break the cardigan. So I want to choose, as classic of a button style as possible. The yarn colors that are coming in here, which one thing, it's great. It matches a lot of my tops, so I can create a lot of different outfits with this. But I find it difficult to choose what kind of button. And I've been going back and forth between, your kind of traditional mother of pearl shell button, just a plain black button. So I do have buttonholes created. There are 4, I believe. Yes. So I'm going to put up on the screen the kind of buttons I've been considering. And if you guys want to let me know in the comments which ones you would choose, please do. And then maybe by the next time I make a podcast episode, I'll have sewn on the buttons. But as of right now, I've been really enjoying wearing it just open. So, and consider you can't see the buttonholes. It's like, do I even need buttons? I don't know. But let me know what you guys think of the button choices I'm considering. All right, guys, I believe that is all I wanted to discuss and share about this particular cardigan. Please feel free if there's anything that perhaps you feel I left out or you're more curious about, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to answer those. I am not gonna go through whips and new yarn today or for this month. I do have whips, I do have new yarn, but since I just feel like I don't have anything meaningful or of value to say about them at this point, I'm not going to push myself to share those right now. So I am going to end it here. I also need to rest my voice. As I said, I'm still recovering from my cold, and I am going to just enjoy some sit down time, some knitting time, because it is Sunday. So this is like bonus recording time for me. If you are new here and you've made it to this point, normally I record all my videos while my daughter has her one nap during the day. And that is because I keep my expectations low for knitting time on the weekends, because I like to commit as much time or devote as much time to hanging out with my family and hanging out with my husband. So this is this is bonus time for me. And also just because I was really itching to finally release all this information about this cardigan. So if you have made it to this point, thank you so much for hanging out and listening with me. Wow, yeah, this is a sign I have reached the limit. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, guys, and listening to what I wanted to share about this cardigan. And I will see you in the next one. So until next time, happy knitting. Bye.